Okay, we're at the top of the hour. It's 10 o'clock here, so let's get going. Um, you're here. This webinar is State Budget for Schools. Our presenters today are Peter Birdsall, Toni Faddis, and KJ Rhoads. Next slide, please. I'm Aaron Heinzman. What is it? I have the privilege of taking care of California for Corwin for all professional development. There's my contact information, my email, and my phone number. You will also receive an email in the next few days for this recording, which will also have my information on it as well. So if there's anything that you may need, that's me. Thank you. Next slide. Zoom keeping reminders. Just quick. What is it? Open the chat box if you have any questions. Now, whether it's Peter, KJ, or Toni can answer during our session today. Also, you can email me afterwards if there's any additional follow-up questions that you can have that we can help support you with. Please do so. Again, this webinar is being recorded. You will receive slides in the next few days. Perhaps, what is it when you receive it, as far as your inbox info at k12.corwin.com, just to make sure that you receive the slides in this recording. Next slide. Upcoming webinars here in a few more days. Marcia Tate will be. These are free webinars. Dustin on February 6th, and on March 13th, Doug and Nancy will be talking about a newer book, Teaching Vocabulary. Next up, here's our presenters today. Let me introduce them. Peter Birdsall. He's the Executive Director of the Professional Learning Coalition. His experience in state education policy includes serving as a legislative advocate for numerous California school districts, county offices, and professional associations. Toni Faddis is a Corwin author and full-time professional learning consultant. Prior to joining Corwin as a full-time consultant, Toni was a district leader, principal, and teacher in diverse communities in Southern California. Her background in bilingual education and as a reading recovery teacher assists her with establishing relationships with teachers, administrators, and learners. Toni also mentors and coaches current and aspiring school leaders in the Education Leadership Department at San Diego State University. KJ Rhoads is a passionate educator who has spent her career of 27 years as a teacher, administrator, and faculty for CSU Sacramento and the University of Massachusetts Global Improving Teaching and Learning. KJ believes school improvement at all levels stem from collective teacher advocacy and a cycle of continuous improvement. Okay, so what is Peter? What is I'd like to, if you want to kick things off?
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. This presentation is going to concern the governor's proposed budget for 2023-24, which was released on January 10th. On this first slide, you can see my email address because this presentation has a little bit different flavor to it than some of the others because it's a combination of hopefully providing information that will help plan for the coming school year. That's the primary purpose. But also, there are some issues that the legislature and the governor need to resolve over the next few months. And so there's an opportunity here for advocacy, which is really the focus of the Professional Learning Coalition. So you have my email on this first slide. Either if it would help to get additional information about any of the specifics of the budget, or if in fact you want to engage in some of the advocacy over the next few months. Basically, there's about a 4-month window where the legislature and the governor's administration are going to be hearing from their constituents what they think about the budget, what are the priorities, what needs to be addressed, and so it's a dynamic period. So if I can help or provide information during that time, please feel free to reach out. Next slide, please. So the sort of first key item in the budget is actually was discussing this with Aaron just prior to this webinar. Dramatically different budget in the last few years. We now have a projected state budget. Right now, the figure is $22.5 billion. But the important thing for K-12 educators is this deficit is almost entirely on the non-education side of the budget. So it's sort of good news. I mean, it's not going to have a dramatic impact on K-12 education fundings. That's the good news. Obviously, we're all citizens of the state, and children are not limited just to what's going on in their schools. So it does have an impact because the non-education budget side of the budget includes all of health and welfare, family services, obviously also higher education, the CSU system and UC. But for our purposes, the budget is very manageable on a K-12 education budget, and I think we can move forward with some fairly secure predictions about what's going to happen. Next slide, please. So I was intended to be a segue to this slide because this is the part we can predict, I think, with the greatest confidence. The budget provides for an 8.13% cost of living adjustment for K-12 education. Cost of living adjustment, you'll hear the term COLA all the time. The governor proposes to fully fund the COLA. The legislature intends to fully fund the COLA. It may be a little bit different than 8.13 when all the numbers settle down, but that's a formulaic discussion. Politically, the COLA will be fully funded. There also is continued support for the Expanded Learning Opportunity Program and Transitional Kindergarten. That is true both the governor's administration and his proposal and in the legislature. So if you are deeply involved in the implementation of those programs, those will also move forward. So those are, as we put on the slide, the major themes, key points. So it's steady as she goes. I would say on the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, there is, I don't know if you consider this a nuance or a variation, but there is a point of discussion I think is worth raising. First of all, to be clear, the governor proposes no change to the Expanded Learning Opportunity Program. It's fully funded. You're expected to be implementing it in 23-24 for all of your unduplicated students, low-income students, English learners, et cetera, in TK through grade 6, or if for some districts, it's all of your students in TK through grade 6. However, in November, the Legislative Analyst Office and their staff to the legislature raised the concern that the program may be overfunded because there are some districts that are either not interested in implementing this program or are having a lot of difficulty implementing the program. So I think that discussion will take place in the legislature. This is a projection of what the legislature may discuss during the next 4 months. So if you are deeply engaged in full implementation, I think it's steady as you go. The legislature is going to fund it. You're in good shape. If you're a district that is, either don't think that's a priority or just having difficulty because of staffing and other challenges, then you may want to watch this issue carefully. Our coalition will be involved in these discussions because the issue raised by the legislature, by the legislative analyst, sort of simply put is if, Aaron's district and my district are both getting funded and he's implementing it really, fully, and I'm hardly implementing it all, then why should I continue to get as much money as Aaron does? And so, in a budget situation where they're looking for money, I think it is going to be an issue, potentially an issue for districts that are not fully implementing the program. Again, that's not in the governor's budget, so I'm sort of projecting future conversations over the next few months. Hopefully that's helpful. But the key point, being very redundant, is if you are working on full implementation, then you are securing the funding and the budget and the language. For TK, there's really none of that ambiguity. That's full speed ahead, according to the plan that's been in place for several years now. Next slide, please. So this is actually the biggest point of contention in the budget, we think. The governor has proposed to reduce what's called the Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Discretionary Block Grant from $3.5 billion to $2.3 billion, so $1.2 billion reduction. Our coalition is going to strongly oppose that. So going back to the first slide, if your community wants to oppose that, please contact me. We'd be happy to work with you. Several reasons for that. First of all, this is money that has already been promised to the school districts. Districts have planned on the implementation of this. And in fact, by June, districts will have received all this money. So it's just really, in our view, a terrible precedent to take money back from the schools, especially when, a much more appropriate methodology, which has been used in the past, is to say in next year's budget, we're going to reduce the amount from, you have to choose where you're going to make the cut, but you take it out of money that's planned for the future rather than taking back money that's actually received this year. The other is, you'll see in a minute, the governor is proposing some new funding initiatives. They're fairly minor, but still to be making a big cut when at the same time you're proposing new stuff, or there's some programs that districts have not been chose how much money they're going to get. It just seems inappropriate in terms of the sort of theme of the budget. The reductions are not insignificant. It's a 34% reduction. So just some quick examples. The chair of the Professional Learning Coalition is the superintendent of Ukiah Unified up in Northern California. They would lose $1.2 million because of the reduction. Moreno Valley and Riverside County is a member of our coalition. They would lose $6.5 million. Modesto, Toni was telling me, one of our presenters, about her background in Modesto. Modesto would lose $5.8 million. So none of those cuts are insignificant. Next slide, please. And then the other thing, which is just sort of startling to me, in our last seminar, webinar, we talked about Prop 28, the voter-approved initiative to support arts and music instruction. The governor is projecting that funding is going to be $941 million. That was basically mandated by the voters. But then the governor says, given this investment, the budget reflects a reduction of approximately $1.2 billion to the arts, music, instructional materials, discretionary block grants. So it's almost like in your face, voters. You voted for a $900 million increase, so we're going to reduce the budget by $1.2 billion. It's just sort of startling that it's so explicit. So in any case, there aren't a lot of major points of contention in this budget with regard to K-12 education, with the exception of this funding for the arts, music, and instructional materials discretionary block grant. What will happen, as I said, is over the next several months, the legislature is going to hear from their constituents about it. By May, we'll actually have new data. What do the state revenues look like? And that, I think most of you know, the California state budget depends very much on what's happening with wealthy taxpayers in the stock market. So sort of my quip, which is not quite accurate, but there's a lot of truth in it, is you tell me what's going to happen in the stock market, and I'll tell you what the state budget is going to look like. So, we'll see if the budget is bigger or less by that time. The legislature does appear they will have to find $1.2 billion to fully fund the COLA. They're committed to doing it. Does not have to come out of money, in our perspective, from districts that have already been allocated to schools. It can be more prospective. Among other things, there's still a reserve for education funding, K-12 education funding, of more than $8 billion that's available. So in any case, that's probably the major advocacy issue in the budget. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that the governor is proposing some new funding in the budget. These are the three items, $300 million for what they're calling an equity multiplier to the LCFF, as the local control funding formula. So on each of these items, we have what's called the budget summary. This is the document the governor releases when the budget is released, but it's not the actual language that would be in the budget or in statute. That is released in early February. So we will have more information about each of these programs at that time. We're doing another webinar in March, so I can then provide more detail on all of that. Also, the deadline for legislators to introduce bills is February 17th, so we'll have all that information. So we'll have a lot more specifics on all of these at that time. So at this point, what we have is what governor's staff has told us and what was in that budget summary. The equity multiplier is basically discretionary money to school districts, but it is focused on districts that have schools with a high proportion of low-income students. I think there's a lot of support in the legislature for continuing to address equity, but there are already a lot of questions being raised about this particular mechanism. So it is, and plus it's something new. At the same time, they're cutting existing funding. So unclear exactly how that's going to play, but I would not plan on it because I think at the very least the numbers or the language could change. Same sort of true with the literacy coaches and reading specialists. The governor and the legislature approved $250 million for this kind of program in the current budget. So this would do it again. But when it was approved the first time, it wasn't done concurrently with cuts to school districts all across the state. So we'll see how that one plays. And then $100 million for high school seniors to access cultural enrichment experiences, such as going to museums. This one is a brand new initiative that, to my knowledge, there hasn't been a lot of discussion about it. So, all these three are going to be subject to significant legislative discussions. If, again, on the advocacy side, you may want to argue for or against them. Be happy to work with you on that. But I would not plan on any of those because both the dollar amount and the language is subject to change between now and when the budget's enacted on July 1st. Next slide, please. The other thing we're looking forward to in terms of potential discussions over the next few months, and again, we will provide more information on this in the March webinar. The governor's budget summary says that he will be proposing a package of amendments to the K-12 accountability and continuous improvement system. We are told that these are not just technical, they will be more significant. And at this point, that's about all I can tell you. We don't have the language and the description has been vague. But obviously, I think everybody participating in this webinar is interested about what's state system for K-12 school accountability and how do we help those districts and schools improve student performance. So that'll be an interesting discussion during the months to come. Next slide, please. So finally, as I indicated earlier, the budget at this point is at the beginning of a fairly dynamic process. The language is released in early February, so then we know exactly what are the details that are of the programs that are being proposed. And then the legislature, the deadline for new bills, so to the extent there are other issues that could be under discussion. I think career technical education, dyslexia are both going to be part of the conversation. That'll start in mid-February also. So we are during that sort of advocacy window. And then come about May, the governor will release his May revision, and we will have, I will say with confidence, we will be getting COLA. Expanded Learning Opportunity Program will be going forward. Transitional kindergarten will be going forward, and we will have a budget by July 1st. So all those are points of confidence. So, for our purposes, as I said, there's like two themes to this. One is advocacy. I probably emphasize that a little bit more than usual. The other is planning, and it is a significant change from prior years, last several years in terms of planning, because it's clear we're not going to have a significant new initiative being launched by the state. So for local educators, you can shift your focus to implementation of what's already done in the books and what you've been working on. So we really have a couple of great presenters for that conversation today. I think the question I think we all need to address, and if I may, I would like them to address this. Given that we can now shift our focus on successful implementation of the existing initiatives, where should local educators focus their attention, and what can they do to most support improved student performance? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I thought that was really helpful to just give us a summary of what the governor's proposed budget is at this particular point, because we know that we are engaged in not only current implementation efforts, but also planning for the future. And so was really helpful just to have, kind of that setting the stage for what's coming up in the future. And I'd love to invite my colleague and good friend, KJ Rhoads from Twin Rivers, which is just north of Sacramento, maybe to kick off our conversation about, like what's on your mind in relation to what Peter shared around the budget. And then also, what is it that you see within, the classrooms and the schools where you support?
Right. Well, thank you. And just so glad to be part of this panel today, everybody. So here in Twin Rivers, we've been really, I think this is sort of a breath of fresh air, to be honest with you. Not very often do we in education get a chance to implement, or think more deeply about the initiatives. So we're really taking that. And my department, the Instructional Implementation Department, has been really trying to coordinate, particularly with Toni's group and Corwin, and work with our instructional coaches and build a system of collective efficacy within our schools. What that looks like right now is we have about 7 or 8 schools that have joined up with us. And we have instructional coaches that are going out and really, really modeling and showing and looking at how do you actually do collective efficacy. So we have playbooks on it, we have research on it, but then how do you actually do that? And so they've been working really hard with principals and leadership teams and teachers to build their own ability to do school improvement. And they're doing that through exemplar lessons based on the gradual release model. They're doing that through strengthening their PLCs. These are things we have in the system, but maybe we haven't had enough time to really, really dig in. And so we are really excited. In fact, with this then budget, we are able to then continue our work that we are doing in the Instructional Implementation Department and really, really go deeper with coaching and helping schools move forward.
I really appreciate that. And I wanted to kind of build on what you said, KJ, because it really, when you talked about going deeper, and that really makes me think about, and I also kind of sigh, like a breath of relief, because teachers are working really, really hard. I mean, no one could ever accuse a teacher of not working hard enough. In my opinion, teachers work really, really, really hard. And so with, like maintaining some of the programs that were implemented over the past couple of years with some of the recovery money, I think it's really helpful for teachers to kind of have an idea or an overview that they're not going to have to learn to do new things. But in fact, if they can really, focus on the skillful use, the skillful implementation of evidence-based practices, we know what works. We know what is effective. We know what works best. And this is really an opportunity, especially, for the literacy coaches, as well as our teachers in the classrooms, to really zero in and hone in on those evidence-based practices, and really get good at them without trying to learn something else, right? But we can really give teachers the time that we need, because what do we know from Joyce and Shower's seminal research, right? One and done, professional learning or PD events, they don't work. Right? But teachers need lots of opportunities to practice, to try something on, to make adjustments. So at the end of the day, the end of the period, that it's all about student learning, and we're making those adjustments such that students are successful.
And I think that's the key, right? And I know you and I, and I'm sure people here today have been involved in many different types of coaching. It's not a new effort, but something we're really focusing on as well is, tailoring it to the school needs and what the students and the teachers need at that site. So, for example, we might have a site that is full of brand new teachers. Well, at that site, the literacy coaches really working on modeling lessons, collaborating with teachers. You might have a site where you have veterans, and it's a little hard to move sometimes when you have veteran teachers. So we're really working on relationship building and how to build trust, and that we're not there to tell people how to do things, but we're really there to help them move their instruction forward based on data and what they're seeing. And so we're very flexible within the department and understand that we're there to serve our students and our teachers. And I think that has been really, really helpful. The qualitative feedback we've received from the field is that it really, really matters the type of people you have as coaches. And so I think that's really, really important. We've started small again. We've rebooted our coaching program here in Twin Rivers. We have a small group of coaches that we are adding to, but I think being deliberate as well in our hiring of people is really, really important, because the whole goal of our program is to build something with you at your school site and build ourselves out of a job ultimately, because as we all know in funding, these jobs can come and go very, very quickly. And so we want to make sure that the work is still being done when the coach leaves for whatever purpose reason that they may be moving on or cuts or whatever happens.
Right, because at the end of the day, it is about building capacity, whether it's building capacity with our students such that they are engaged, they're motivated, they're inspired, right? They're really becoming their own teachers, but also it's building capacity with our adults as well, so that they're, not just getting a smattering here and there, but they really feel that they have a core set of practices that they are implementing on a regular basis. And there's evidence of student learning, right? We have proof. There's artifacts, there's formative assessment that is occurring on a regular basis, within the classroom, that is perhaps looking at student work, it's exit slips, but it's teachers, shifting from, like being the isolated person in the classroom, where their classroom is their kingdom, right? Where they're just one person that's looking at that formative assessment, to now we're looking across a grade level, or we're looking across a department. And then we're discussing, well, how did I implement reciprocal teaching? Or what was the mentor text that I used for that writing lesson? And so then we start having those conversations that not only build capacity, but also serve to calibrate people's expectations, right? And in so doing, we're building our teachers' capacity such that they can carry these particular evidence-based strategies on their own.
And that's really the goal. I mean, with Peter here and everything, really talking about the budget, we've all been through multiple budgets, in our lifetime. That's really the piece, Toni, is really building the capacity of the school. It's not about us. It's not about the coaches. It's not about the district office. It's about how can we help the school build its own systems, build its collective groupings, and focusing on data informative assessments and best practices so that we can withstand whatever budget cuts come through. We don't need a new program. We don't need a thing. A lot of time the answers lie within your staff.
And I just wanted to add too, and I'd love to hear kind of your perspectives of what you're seeing in classrooms currently. And, in a lot of cases, we had quite a bit of absenteeism over the past couple of years. What I'm seeing in classes now is more students are present. We still have some chronically absent students. That is also, like being addressed for the whole child. But what I'm noticing in some classrooms is that teachers are working really, really hard. And on paper, perhaps their lesson is really amazing. They have some great prompts. They are, thinking about, what is going to be interesting and motivating to the kids. But what I'm seeing in classrooms is that amazing lesson that was designed to really motivate kids isn't perhaps landing the way teachers anticipated. And what I'm seeing in some cases, and not to say everywhere, but in some cases, I think teachers are really happy to have all the kids back. And, that's an amazing feeling. But then there's also a little bit of angst, as if perhaps if I turn the kids loose to do some turn and talks, to do some collaborative learning experiences, I'm going to lose them because they don't have that level of socialization that maybe they had a few years ago. And so I say that because what I've noticed again is that makes teachers work even harder, right? Because now they're kind of controlling the lesson, that full hour. And instead of inviting students into the lesson to, identify, like, what are their goals, like those micro goals for the next hour? How are we inviting students in? And I think it all comes from a good place of, trying to, accelerate student learning. But when we're not inviting students in, they're really not engaging fully, or in some cases, even partially. What do you see, KJ?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I definitely see that, here in Sacramento. And I think where we have tried to mitigate some of that is really taking that gradual release model and lesson design that, you have, and really adding to that with those, focusing in on learning intentions and success criteria and getting students involved in their learning. And as a teacher, am I really planning knowing my students? So that's where that lesson design template really is helpful, because it helps us really take into consideration where our students are at, where should they be going, how am I going to get there, and really that formative piece within the lesson design to make sure we're hitting those milestones, like you said, are little mini markers, right? So I think the formatting, which doesn't cost anything, everyone, a lesson design format and template, and meeting with your grade level partner doesn't cost any money, by the way, so these pieces we know are highly effective. And then it's been exciting. We've been seeing the lesson study within our district, where we have a coach, and then they teach a lesson maybe first, right? And then the team moves to the next classroom. That teacher of that classroom teaches the same lesson that they just saw a coach teach. And then they have that collaborative dialogue and talk about that, so that, they can talk about all those pieces that go into a lesson, the collaboration, like you said, the social skills that go into it. While we have literacy coaches in Twin Rivers, they focus on entire teaching. So I think those are pieces, we're definitely seeing, but I think our lesson design and the collaborative culture and conversations help with helping people focus. And reflection, right? To have a facilitator and helping you reflect as a practitioner is really, really beneficial. So why didn't that land? And because we're taking in those considerations of visible learning and intentional teaching, we're able as coaches to bring that out for people.
I really appreciate that. I just want to process on that for a moment, because when you were talking about the gradual release and how the literacy coaches are really supporting all of the teachers in many ways, it makes me think about how teachers are structuring their minutes with students, right? And as you said, gradual release, it costs us nothing. It costs us nothing to say, like, as a team, let's talk about those 4 components of highly effective instruction. What's going to be the direct instruction? What's going to be the modeling today? How long am I, how long am I modeling? Is it taking too long? What is guided instruction going to look like? And those collaborative learning opportunities, as well as the opportunities for deliberate practice. Doesn't cost us anything, but it's those conversations that we have with colleagues that are gold, right? Those are what are going to really make learning come alive for ourselves, which is really motivating, but also for our students. And it makes me think about those conversations, the reflections, and how it is that literacy coaches are supporting teachers in that effort too, right? But so that they can also replicate it. So it's not just, like during this one, hour, but it ripples out across class periods, across the day, across the department. And that really is motivating, for the teachers, because then they're able to, put their own spin on things. They can bring their own teaching style, right? And we know from the research that students really identify with that when teachers are, like when they're passionate about their content, they're responsive, they know that there's a caring adult in the room, our students really rise to those expectations that we set for them.
I better turn my, well, thank you, KJ and Toni, for that, for sharing your insights and your experience, especially what you're doing at Twin Rivers, KJ, very valuable as far as that goes. So
thank you.
So again, you got a chance to meet Peter, KJ, Toni. If there's any questions, again, when you get the webinar link, please feel free to email. You have my email address as well. If there's any additional follow-up questions, beyond this webinar, please reach out. What does it mean? Hopefully we're all here to move education forward. So, next slide. Oh, okay. There we go. Upcoming Corwin Institutes. We have a virtual one here in about a week and a half, and also then followed up with another Teacher Clarity in the middle of February, and then the Teacher Clarity Playbook conferences down in San Diego here at the end of next month. So a few things, and you can always check out Corwin's website for upcoming institutes that they constantly update, and we continually add new events for folks to, again, continue our journey to move forward. So again, my name is Aaron Heitzman. For folks that I've met, nice to see you again today. If you'd like to reach out to me, please do so. Love talking about education. Love seeing if we could help or point you in the right direction as far as that particular support. So next slide. Oh, thank you for joining us. Here's some of our titles, our literacy titles. Use the code right there if you'd like to receive 30% in free shipping. Right now, Teaching and Reading, a new book by Doug and Nancy. Vocabulary Playbook, which is just going to be coming out here, I think, towards the end of this month. And then a title, This is Balanced Literacy, that's been around for a while, and it's very relevant, and folks really gravitate towards that book as we're all trying to push literacy moving forward. So, okay, well, I appreciate everybody joining today. Our next webinar will be in March, and I think Peter will have some more follow-up to be able to share from that trailer bill as we solidify some things moving forward. Again, thank you for joining us. Hopefully everybody has a great rest of the day, and we'll see you then soon, okay?
Thank you.